Okay, so I'm just going to shut my door. So welcome to the Bendigo Tech School, also known as my office at the moment. Now I'm just setting up a couple of things, especially for those of you that haven't used YouTube live streaming before. I'm just checking that everything is working. Let me. Okay, so I'm just going to shut my door and I'm just going to check my feed. Awesome. Let me just test the sound. So welcome to the Bendigo Tech School, also known as my office at the moment. Right. Things, especially for those of you that haven't used YouTube live streaming before. I'm just checking. Cool. All right. Excellent. So I've just tested everything on my end. I've got a bit of a different setup today than I have the past couple of days, hopefully to make things a little bit easier for me. So if it looks like I'm looking up and you're seeing the bottom of my neck a lot, that's because I've set up another screen, and that's where my my whole live streaming setup is. So up here I can see my stream, and I can see also my viewers, and I can see my chat, but I've got to look up. So the camera is on my laptop, which I'm going to work from, and that's kind of looking down. The other thing as well, I guess I'll probably go over this every time I do a live stream to begin with, is I'm using YouTube. I'll switch across here. I'm using YouTube live streaming, which we think is great for a bunch of reasons. Number one, actually, look, I'll just do this. So let me just go to. All right, let's see if that's picking up. Got my mic on. I'm just going to hear it down here, hopefully. All right. Now, because there's a 20-second delay, it's going to... All right, there we go. See if that's picking up. Got my mic on. Down here, hopefully. All right, how are we now? So there's a 20-second delay, so by the time I do a fix, it takes me... Yes, can hear. Thank you. So as I was saying really quickly, we'll get started into Photoshop in a second. So we're using YouTube live streaming, like I said, for a bunch of reasons. The resolution is capped a little bit. All live streaming platforms are capping their resolution to 480p. So what I'm going to do is I'm also going to record this, which I'll start in a second. So I'm going to record this session separately, and I'll also upload that to YouTube as well. So if you want to go back and have a look at it and see some of the buttons and stuff that I press, the high-res playback will be better for that. But the live stream, like I said, the res is a little bit short and a little bit small, but I'll fix that up and I'll change the res on my screen to make it to compensate. So yes, there we go. So YouTube live streaming, it's really cool. It's really easy, especially if you're a teacher. I really would recommend it for students as well, mainly because this is where they're at already. There's a whole bunch of privacy settings that you can set up. We've done a session on that. There's a couple of other sessions on our channel you can check out on why we use it. So if you want to see that, but I mean, the main reason for live streaming through YouTube is, like I said, your students know how to use YouTube. They're already there. They're using it all the time, so you're just part of that. So let's get into Photoshop. What I'm going to do is I'm going to actually start recording my screen. I'm going to switch out of this view because I'm sure you're sick of seeing my giant head. I'm going to go into here. Excellent. Okay. And what I might do, because I don't think I'm important for this session, is I'm going to really squish my video all the way down there. All right. And I'm just going to turn that image off. Okay. It's more important to see Photoshop than it is to see me. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start recording. Excellent. Okay. So I'm recording this session now separately. I'm going to jump into Photoshop. There we go. Okay, so like I said, I'm actually running two screens at the moment. So if I'm looking up, it's so I can check the chat and see what's going on and make sure our stream is working and make sure my audio stays connected again as well. I am running off my laptop, so every now and then you might hear it whiz up and the fans take over, but hopefully we'll be okay. Okay, so Photoshop. Now, this session in the tech school was going to run for about an hour and a half. But I guess because this is more one way, I suppose, I thought we'd kind of cap it to about 45 minutes to an hour. We'll see how we go. And it's going to just be an overview of Photoshop. So we're going to run sessions for the next term, really, online. So what we'll do is we'll kind of keep running more advanced sessions as we go. We'll also have, we'll kind of repeat a few sessions and those kind of things as well. So I'm in Photoshop. Now, I assume you all have... No worries. I assume you all have a copy of Photoshop. I think with the DET schools, it's free with your, you log in and you'll get access to that. I'm not sure how private and Catholic schools are working with Adobe in that case, but I know the DET schools all have access to it, and so do your students. And it's pretty powerful. So really, when it comes down to Photoshop, now I'm using Photoshop 2020 here. I'm not sure what versions you're all using, maybe 2019, possibly even 2018. Visually, there might be some changes, but they do pretty much as a functional level all work the same. The new versions just kind of start tacking on a couple of extra more cloud-based things at the moment. So if my version looks a little bit different, that is why, but I'm going to show you how we set that up. But yeah, so Photoshop, really why you would use Photoshop. Now, there are probably two main packages with a Creative Suite. There's Photoshop and there's also Illustrator. Adobe Illustrator, we're doing some sessions on later next week as well. They are similar in how they work, but they are very different formats. So the easiest way I put it and the way I talk to our students on it is Photoshop is for editing. Okay, so if you already have an image, you've got a photo, you've got something you've created in Illustrator, or even some really old photos. It's completely up to you. But Photoshop is there to edit what you already have. Okay, maybe add some effects, those kind of things. It's really not designed to create stuff. I mean, you definitely can create stuff in Photoshop, but it's definitely there for editing stuff you already have. Whereas Illustrator, that is the program for creating stuff. And I think it's in the name, right? Like Photoshop is for like editing photos and Illustrator is to illustrate, to create. So they're quite different, but they do kind of like complement each other. So Photoshop today, we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about its interface, how it works and its tools, and also why we use it to edit photos. Okay. So as we load up, basically when you start Photoshop, you're greeted to this window. Again, your windows might be slightly different depending on the version, but this is pretty much what we have here. Okay. Here are some recent photos I've been working on. And here is just the tips that will come up as you kind of go through. So what we're going to do is I'm going to create a new document. That's where you're going to start. Now, I guess this is the first thing that you want to kind of figure out really quickly. When you get a new document, you have a lot of options into how this document is going to begin. Okay, so think of this like this is your template. This is your paper size, I guess. Okay, now it's showing me recent versions, but if we go up here, what it's doing here is it's breaking down, I guess, the main kind of sizes of paper that you would use, okay? And that is in dimensions, excuse me, and also in DPI, which we'll talk about, or PPI as well. Excuse me, I just realised I didn't have any water, so I'm drinking my son's water. Okay, so up here you have a bunch of options. So you can see we have photo, and I'm just going to view all the presets, and it's showing you all of the standard photo sizes and their resolutions. If we go into print, and I'll do fingerprints again, we have all paper sizes and their resolutions as well. Okay, so A4, where's my A4? A4 is for what you're going to work with a lot. Okay, and you can see you've got a resolutions of, I'm leaving on pixels per inch. So you've got 210 by 297 millimeters, so that's your standard A4 size. And then you have pixels per inch. And this is really important, and we'll talk about that in a second. So here are all your preset sizes here. And then obviously as you keep going through, there's more presets. So web is the one I use quite a lot as well. And it has those presets there. And the reason why these are there is it's automatically setting up the size of your document and the resolution to best suit that format. So if we look at print and we look at an A4 page, there's your dimension. So 210 by 297. I'm just thinking if I have an A4 bit of paper in here. All right, I've got my son's Easter Bunny book, right? So what we have here is this is an A4. Okay, I'll move back a bit. This is an A4 page. Okay, so there's your dimension. Now your resolution is the amount of pixels that you have per inch of screen. Okay, so in 1 inch of that bit of paper, there's 300 dots. So that's really high res. So for things like A4, okay, you want a really, really high resolution document because you're going to print these. All right, and when you print them out, the more that you have, the more quality you have per inch, the more quality that printout's going to be. Okay, so that's why something like A4 has 300 ppi because you're going to print it out. But if we jump into web and we look at, say, an average web screen, so I'm going to go into here and I'll look at, say, most common. So now we have dimensions. So the dimensions here are a lot less. Okay, so that is probably about the width of an A4 page. But the big difference here is you'll see we have 72 ppi. So that means the resolution of that image is a lot smaller. There's a lot less dots per inch. Now that's because we're viewing it on a screen. We're viewing it on like a laptop screen or a computer screen or even a big, a big massive computer screen. You don't need super high resolution images. They still look really great because we're not printing them. Now the reason why you're having 72 ppi means those images will load a lot faster. So I can have a web image which is 300 ppi, but it means that image is going to be 4 or 5 times larger in size, and I visually won't see much of a difference on my screen. So you don't want that, right? You don't want these massive images on a web page or an email or something like that because it's going to take longer for the person to download it and to watch it. So that's why Photoshop gives you these presets to begin with. It's like, where are you working? Are you working on a photo or are you working on the web? If you are, we'll set those presets up for you. You can, of course, change all of these after the fact as well. Okay, that's why they're there. When we open an image, so if I was opening a photo up, it would default to whatever that photo is as well. Okay, so what I'm going to do for today is I'm going to go into print and I'm going to go into A4. Personally, if it's me, I like working in a much higher resolution. Okay, so I like working, even if I'm not doing print, if I'm working for web and I'm going to make an icon or I'm going to make something for our website, I will still work in a super high resolution. Okay, because that means I've got a much higher asset that down the track, if I did want to print it, I do. Like I don't have a lower quality version I can print. I've got a really nice quality version. Whereas if you started off at a low res, it's harder to go back up again. But if I was saving this file for the web, you can actually choose to down res it or down sample it for the web as well. So my advice personally would be always work at a larger kind of resolution and a larger format than you need, because you're better off having that to begin with. So for today's lesson, I'm going to use an A4 page, probably even use an A3 sometimes, but I'm going to use A4 for today, and I will leave it. I'll just do a portrait here. So down here, you can see your preset details, so you can change these, okay, pixels per inch. You've got your color, RGB and probably CMYK are the main two that we use. I'm going to leave it on RGB for now. That probably won't matter much. And a lot of this kind of stuff here, I wouldn't be stressing about at all, okay? This is kind of more when you get into print that you want to use this kind of stuff down here. So anyway, I'm just going to do A4 and I'm going to hit create. Okay, so the first thing you're probably going to see when you start here is this is your layout. Now again, my layout's probably going to look radically different to yours because you can actually change the layout of your screen here, okay, to suit what you're working on. Now I've been working on a lot of stuff with color, so that's why I've got this here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go up into my window and I'm going to go into my workspace. And down here, you can see you've got a lot of different workspaces. I'm just checking chat, cool. You've got a lot of different workspaces up here. And what that's going to do is that's going to reset, I guess, the layout of Photoshop to suit what you're working in. Oh, and I should also say too, if you have any questions, feel free to use chat. If you want me to slow down or you want me to repeat something, feel free to type it in chat, because that's probably the easiest way for me to understand what's going on. Like I said, there is that 20-second delay, but I'll definitely keep reading it as we go. But yes, so what we're going to do is I'm going to go into Reset Essentials. So I'm going to click that. And now I'm in kind of like the Essentials layout, okay? So this is like your main tools, your basic tools. But if I went into my workspace and I went into, say, Graphic and Web, there we go. You can see it's changed the layout to suit what you're working with, okay? So now we're changing into more text-based kind of work up here. You can see all these in any kind of layout, but it's just trying to make it nice and clean. So make sure everyone's on the same page. Why don't we all go into Essentials? That's if obviously you're working with it, and leave it there. All right, now that's pretty much what we need. Here's your help stuff down there. You can move these all around if you want to, okay? You can pop these panels out. You can move them into other places. You know, the panels that you use a lot, you can have in different spots. If you're lucky enough to have 2 monitors, obviously, you can put all of these panels on a different monitor. So I can drag that up, put it in my monitor up here, and that way I've got much more space to work with, because this is my kind of working space here. So you can move those wherever you want. And again, if you go into Window, here are all the other spaces that you can look at. Okay, so it's only showing me a few, but for instance, I use Pathfinder quite a lot. I use Paragraph quite a lot. Let's go into Character. I'm going to put that on. There we go. So if I turn that on, it opens up a new panel here, which you can then choose to kind of put in if you want to, or take it away. Okay, or even just let it float around as well. So your window has a whole bunch of different kind of areas that you can play with. So history, for instance, if I put history up there, I can see my history. So if I was doing a lot of work, I've got my undo history. I can follow that here as well. I'm going to go back into view. So as you use Photoshop, info I use all the time. As you use Photoshop, you'll probably start to use different windows, and you'll get a bunch that you use a lot, and you'll keep those up. And you can kind of save that as your preferred layout. Like Timeline is another one I use a lot where I'm doing animations, because you can do animation in Photoshop as well. So the more you kind of play around with these windows up here, the more you can see. Here's my shape window. So a whole bunch. So have a play through those. It's probably the easiest way to figure out how everything works. Brushes, for instance, by playing around with those windows. And if you ever get lost, if you ever can't find a window, if you ever need something, again, workspace, and just kind of reset that. So if I reset that, we're back here. Okay. So that is pretty much the layout and how you set your desk up on Photoshop. In the center here is your paper. Okay, so that is our A4 page. You can see it's zoomed out. So this is at 33% because we're using an A4 piece of paper and the resolution is quite high. So if I wanted to actually zoom this up to the full size, that's the full size of the screen. That's what the paper will actually look like. So you can see if I scroll it down, right? So it's pretty big. It's like twice the size of my laptop screen. Because we're working in print, the resolution is so high that it's higher than my screen. That's why we've kind of zoomed out here to see it all in. Now, what I did there was just Control plus and Control minus. Okay, if we're on a Mac, it's just the Mac key, plus and minus. I think it's Command key, plus and minus. Okay, to kind of zoom in and out. And the other thing you're going to do a lot of is you are probably going to start to pick up shortcut keys. Now, I won't go through all of them now. There's a whole bunch of them, but you Control C and Control V. And so what you'll do once you start to use Photoshop a lot is you won't do what I'm doing now, right? Where I hunt and peck and I look for the select tool and I look for the paint tool and then I look for this and click on it. You'll just use the keyboards, right? So if I hit A, I go straight into my direct selection tool, or V goes into my move tool. So you'll start to learn what these shortcut keys are, so you never actually have to stop and move. You'll use your mouse in one hand and your keyboard is like tapping away, getting all the shortcuts ready. So that is our layout, okay? Then we've got our windows through here, which we'll talk about in a second. But let's start using it, right? Like, I guess the first thing we'll do is the simplest thing we can possibly do. I'm going to press B and get my paintbrush up, and I'm just going to draw a line, okay? Now, what I'm doing here is I'm pressing the brackets, open and close, to make that a bit bigger. And I'm going to change the brush to a hard brush here, and I'll just change my color to black. Let me just do a new layer. All right, oops, I'm on my eraser. There we go. All right, so there's a line. We're using Photoshop, right? I might even just put that on a harder brush so you can see it. All right, so there is a nice, simple line in Photoshop, right? And like we said, we are not going to use Photoshop to make stuff. We're going to use Photoshop to edit stuff, but I'm using this as my example of how everything works. So I've used a paintbrush, and away I go, okay? Now, the other thing here is there's my paintbrush tool. You will notice that, okay, that's great. We'll see how it works. You'll notice that a lot of these tools here have a little arrow in the corner, okay? Now, what that means is it means there are more tools under that are similarly grouped. So if I hold that down, you can see now I have a bunch of different tools. Okay, so brush, pencil. If I go into my pencil tool, I'm now in my pencil tool. If I hold that back down again, I go back to my brush tool. So whenever you see a little arrow like that, there's a lot more under there. You can expand that if you wanted to and see all the tools, but they're trying to make it nice and clean for you. So again, hold that down and you'll see more tools under them, and they pretty much all have extra options. So there's my brush tool, okay? And then I've got an eraser tool, obviously, and I'm going to rub some of this stuff out. Wonderful. All right. Now, the reason why I did this is I want to show you probably the main thing of Photoshop that it uses, which all photo editors kind of use now, and that's called layers. All right, so let me show you how this works. So I'm going to draw an amazing picture because I'm an artist, right? So there we go. And a smiley face. Look at that. Wow, that's why I work at the tech school. Cool. So I've drawn my smiley face, and it's amazing. Now, down here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on a new layer. I'm going to tap on that. And I might even just make this panel a little bit bigger so you can see it. Actually, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to change my display settings quite a lot to make it even easier for you to see. I'm going to bring this up to 150. Okay, whoa. So that's made my panels here probably easier for you to see on YouTube's lower resolution. It just makes it a little bit trickier for me to work. So you'll just have to bear with me while I kind of work with a less screen real estate here. All right, so I'm going to go back to my layers. Oops. Okay, so down here you can see I've got one layer which was my amazing drawing, okay, and then I made a new layer which put it above my drawing, okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select this layer and drag it up and put it on the top. So now that new layer I made is actually below my smiley face, and I can turn it on and off. So think of layers like sheets of cellophane, right, or transparency paper. So as you put them on top of each other, you can see what's below them, all right? So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go on layer 2, and I'm going to go back to my paintbrush, all right? I'm going to change the color, so I'm going to go and view my swatches. Oops. Actually, I'll just do it here. I'm going to go to yellow, and I'm going to paint this in, right? I'm going to increase the size here. My son would be very proud of me coloring in the lines. All right, so there we go. What? Oh, I've gone over the lines. Oh, that's right. I'll erase that. So what an amazing drawing. Now, the reason why we have layers is what you'll see is now if I go to the eraser and I kind of rub stuff out here, I'm only erasing the layer that I have selected. Okay. So if I had no layers and I did that yellow, what would happen is everything would merge together. So if I wanted to clean something out, if I wanted to erase something, I erase my whole image. So you want to work on layers because in that way you can edit each individual layer without affecting the one above it or below it. Okay, so it gives you a lot more control of what you're working on. And a lot of photos, when you start photo editing, will have 10, 20, 30, 40 different layers. So you're not affecting anything else that's happening on the screen. Okay, so that's what our layers are for. So it allows you to work on a layer without affecting the other layer. So if I go back to my paintbrush, I just press B, I can color that in here, and I'm not affecting the above layer. So layers are super important, okay? And they're things you're going to start to use a lot as you kind of go through Photoshop. All right, so there's our layers there. I'll show you a few more tools, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring out a photo. I'll just download a random photo, and we'll actually edit a bit of a photo, and I'll show you how we do some editing tools. Like I said, today's session is just a bit of an intro, just an introduction to how this is all working. I've seen a few people have joined us as well. So if you kind of join us halfway through the stream, what YouTube live streaming does, it allows you to go back. So if you wanted to jump back to the start of this stream, you definitely can, and you can keep watching it as you go. It's kind of like a DVR system that's built into it, or this video will be available back online when we're done. So anyway, back to this. So let's have a look. So I guess a couple of options here. We've got our move tool, pretty simple, so I can move around. And again, you can see, depending on what layer I'm on, it'll move the tools on that layer. All right. I have my selection tool. So your selection tool is that, exactly that. I can select certain elements, okay? So if I select this layer and I open my selection tool here and then go to move, it's going to just move that area in that selection. And you can see it's automatically, it's quite clever, it's automatically selected just the pixels that are on there, all right? The other thing you'll notice when I'm moving, see this little pink line that appears? What that is doing is it's trying to align for you. Now, it's trying to be clever, so it'll try and say, well, this is the center, or this is aligned to this object. It's automatically trying to align for you. So that's kind of a bit of a snap tool, so that's there as well. Now, I'll just get out of my selection. Again, like I said, if we hold that down, you'll see you have other options down here. All right, so I can have, all right, a circular selection if I want to, all right? Or I can have a single row. So there's my selection tools. Your lasso works a little bit differently. With your lasso, what we do here is it allows me to draw a selection, and then it automatically will select it for us, okay? There's another thing that it can do really well. If we hold that down, it's called magnetic lasso. So this is really handy if you're trying to select, well, let's just say we have lots of stuff here, you're trying to select just the one thing, it will kind of do that for you. Let me explain. So let me zoom in a little bit. Now what I'm going to do here is I'm going to select, and notice how this is kind of trying to snap automatically to that color. So that allows you, and we'll do this when we do photo editing, this allows you to be very precise in what you're selecting because it's trying to automatically snap to the right color or the right object that you're using. It does it automatically for you, so it's pretty clever. So that's your magnetic lasso tool. As we go to the next one, we have a magic wand, and that will do kind of what we were trying to do before, but it's going to automatically do it for us, right? So you can see as I select here, I'll zoom back out again. As I select here, it's trying to automatically select what it thinks is the right thing. So if I do that there, it's going, well, you obviously want the whole smile. Or if I select the eye, it's like, yeah, you want that eye. Or if I select this, it's just selecting that for you. So it's very clever in what it selects. Okay, that's your magnetic select tool. This is our cropping tool. So this can crop the canvas. All right. So if I want to make it a bit smaller, I'm working on an A4 page. I can kind of crop that down and hit enter, and it's cropped. Okay. But what you'll find if I kind of crop back, the second you do that crop, you've lost that image. So cropping is probably not recommended unless you really, really need to. You can revert, obviously. So I guess while we're here, let's do the next big thing in Photoshop, which is your undo. So you can go edit and undo. All right, we can go back. I'm just going to press Control Z, right? And Control Z goes back and forth just once. If you want to keep going back, okay, you actually have a way to kind of continue to go back all the way. So I'm going to go to my crop, and I'm just going to Control Z it all the way back, right? So it has a bit of a history. So Photoshop will save that history, and it's pretty... can I slow down? Sure. So I generally talk super fast, and that's just what I do, so I'm sorry about that. But I will try and slow down. I guess the benefit of watching the playback video when you watch it a little bit later, YouTube will allow you to do the playback at like half speed. So that might be normal speed for everybody else. But I'll try and slow down, so I feel a little bit excited. But yes, so you have a whole bunch of undo options. Depending on your computer, all right, will be basically the limit of how many things you can undo. So if you have a fairly recent computer that has a fair bit of, I guess, memory and hard drive space, you can actually undo a lot more, all right, because it saves every single state of your photo. So again, the more memory you have in a computer, the more hard drive space you have, the more you can actually undo. So just bear that in mind. You'll hit a limit where you can't undo anymore. So you also want to be kind of saving as you go as well. So I'm just going to press Control Z. So Control Z is your undo button, and you'll use that a fair bit. This is your eyedropper. This automatically detects the color that's on the screen. Now, again, I don't have a photo up yet, so it's kind of pretty basic, but it allows you to pick the exact color that's on the screen. So we'll look at that in a second. Your healing brush is there to fix blemishes and to fix skin and those kind of things, and it does it automatically as well. It's another AR tool. So I'll show you that in a second when we get into photos. The brush is pretty simple. It allows you to paint. You have a bunch of options in your paint brushes down here. You have a whole bunch of brushes, so we can kind of scroll through and see all the brushes that we have by default. All right, we've got media brushes. All right, we've got wet mini brushes. So depending on what kind of effect you want, there's a brush there for it as you kind of go through. If you're using a mouse to paint in Photoshop, then you're kind of limited because there's no pressure sensitivity with a mouse, so it's either on or off. If you're using Photoshop and you happen to have like a Wacom tablet or you've connected up to an iPad or something like that, that allows you to have pressure sensitivity. So if you're using like a stylus with Photoshop on a screen, you can do more things. You can have tilt, you can have pressure, you can do all of that. So Photoshop has all those tools, but you kind of need to have the hardware for that as well. So we'll get out of our photos there. Then we've got the clone brush here, which I'll explain a little bit later. Okay, this is for allowing you to select certain elements in an image and then kind of make copies of that as you go. So again, most of this is all photo based, so you're not going to see much of it until I open the photo. Paint bucket, it's pretty simple. It just fills the screen with paint. Blur, I'll talk about that when we work on a photo. But you'll notice, if you see it on my screen, you'll see it on yours too. If you just hover over any of these tools, it does give you a handy little, I guess, video of what it actually does as well. So I should probably just stop talking and let you hover, right? so you can see it there. All right, so there are tools, and that's kind of the layout. So what we'll do for the last half an hour is we'll edit a photo. So I'm going to open up a photo, and feel free to do the same if you're working with me on your own machines. So let me just find a basic photo. I'll find something I've got. All right, I'm just going to right-click this, open with Photoshop. All right, so here is a pretty bad photo, right? Here's a photo that I took earlier. This is just my son in the Lego room. He has a Lego room. So Graham would be proud. So what we've got here is a pretty basic photo, but now we can start to use some of the tools in Photoshop that we kind of glossed over before. You'll also notice when I opened up that image or that photo, my original is still there. So we have some tabs for your images. So you can open up a bunch of images and be working from each of those. You can copy and paste and those kind of things as well. So bear that in mind that you do have tabs as you're working. Again, the more power you have in your computer, the more tabs you can have open, the more memory you have. Photoshop is quite memory intensive. So it does use a thing called a scratch disk. And a scratch disk is a hard drive in your computer that it uses for temporary storage. So again, you want to kind of keep, if you're doing a lot of Photoshop work, you want to try and have a fair bit of memory and also hard drive space on your computer, because Photoshop will use that as it works to back stuff up, to have copies of it. And then once you're done, it kind of clears that away. So my computer's actually getting a bit clogged, but we'll see how we go. All right, so here's my photo. Now I'm going to zoom in because I can. You can see I can zoom in. There's 100%. So that is 100% of what the photo looks like. So if I print this photo out, the resolution on this is probably 300 dpi. I can see it there. And if I zoom in even more, which I can, there we go, you get right into the pixel level. Okay, so we'll do a little bit of technical talk now. So every photo that you take, like we said before, you have that PPI or DPI, so pixels per inch, and you can see how many pixels are here. So every pixel is just a square. Okay, a square, and in that square is the color. So every photo is made up of a whole bunch of these squares, and a whole bunch of those squares are different colors. So as you zoom in, you're actually going to get to that point where you see the squares or you see the pixels. So if you enlarge a photo that you've already taken, you only have so much information to work with. You can't make the photo larger, right, without losing quality. Okay, so again, that's really important depending on what you're doing with this object. So if I was going to make this a giant billboard, right, I would probably want to have a higher resolution image, so when I print it out, those squares aren't massive. And also if I start to enlarge this image, I'll start to see those squares as well. So that's what pixels are, and that's where Photoshop is made up of pixels, or images are made up of pixels. Whereas when we start using Illustrator is using vectors, but we'll talk about that later. But anyway, here's my photo, and here it is zoomed out a little bit. So let's start to have a bit of a play with this. The first thing you'll see is in my layer, I have a background layer. So that is the photo, and by default it's locked, which means I can't accidentally destroy it, right? Because it's kind of locked in there. So that photo is still there, and I can fix it up. So I'm just going to undo those there. All right. So what we'll do is we'll kind of get rid of that lock. So now I can edit it, and I'm going to put a new layer on here. So the very first thing you want to do if you're working with a photo is you want to do a new layer. Okay. You don't really want to start editing that original photo that's there, because you'll start to lose that information. So what you want to do is have a new layer to start working off if you're going to make any changes. And that way you can always go back to the original photo. Okay, you've always got that photo there as a backup. What I actually like to do as well is I actually like to right click this, and I like to duplicate it, and I'm just going to call it copy. So now I actually have two copies of that photo, okay, both sitting there, just in case, right? Just in case I've made a massive change and I've edited something, but I really want to go back and have a look at what the original was, or I want to take an element from the original photo. I've got a couple of copies and I can do that. All right. So let's have a look at some of these tools we were playing with before. So I'm going to do a real simple one. I'm going to zoom into my buddy here, Winston, right? And Winston has a bit of a cut on his nose. It's a shame because he's such a nice looking dog. So let's show you some of the main tools that we have here as well. I'm going to use this thing called a spot healing brush. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to zoom in a little bit. So again, I'm using my brackets to make those pixels, that size a little bit larger there. I'm going to hit that. I'm going to click it and see how we go. All right, so I might even just move in a little bit bigger. Looks like his spot's a little bit big. All right, I'm going to go through here. I'm just going to kind of drops. Let's go back. There we go. There we go. Cool, done. done. All right, so you can see there, I'll make it a bit smaller. So it's just trying to kind of clean up that image for us automatically. That's not bad, right? Like, that's a pretty big cut. If I zoom in, though, you'll start to kind of see what it's done there. All right, you can kind of see that circle just around there. So what it's trying to do is it's trying to be really clever and look at the pixels around it and automatically fix that up. So if I kind of zoom all the way out, you're not going to see it. It's pretty cool, right? Like, it's done a pretty good job. If I turn that off and on, you kind of see the difference there, right? So it's pretty quick at doing those kind of things. They're like spot healing tools, but we might even do a better job of it. So let's zoom in a bit more. All right, so if we scroll down here, you can see we've got a few options. So spot healing brush is just that. It's there for healing like these little spots, okay? The healing brush tool is for kind of painting. So painting, I guess, spots in, right? Like painting areas out. So if I just kind of keep going back. So what I can do here is I'll bring that down a little bit. I'm just going to select an area. So if I press the Alt key on my computer, it's allowing me to pick an area. So I'm going to say I'm going to pick this area and click there. And then it's using that area as a bit of reference to how to fix that image up. There we go. So that allows you to have a bit more manual control. So I can see there, I don't really like that. So I'm going to press the Alt, pick a bit of fur here, and then just paint over. There we go. So this allows you to pick an area of the photo that you want to use as a reference point, and then it's going to try and automatically blur that in and clean it up. There we go. So you can go in and spend a bit of time and actually fix this up quite a lot. There we go. So that did a similar job, but it did a better job, okay? Because we have a bit more control of that there. And now I'm going to kind of zoom all the way out. So there are healing tools, and they're probably the main things you're going to use when you use Photoshop to begin with, is to start to use these healing tools. So spot healing tool, just for little, very small spots, like a pimple or something like that. Click, it's gone. Your healing brush allows you to select an area as a reference point, and then you kind of paint over the area you want to repair, and it does it for you. Red eye tool, that's the, I don't even know if you have red eye photos anymore. I don't think I've seen a red eye photo since we've kind of switched to digital cameras, but that's for that as well, to get rid of red eye photos. That's too. So there's our healing tools, okay? So that was pretty easy. I'm going to zoom back in here, and we'll fix that up. So now let's just say we want to get rid of something a bit larger, all right? So let's have a look at this photo. What can I get rid of? All right, let's get rid of this little Lego guy down here, okay? So if we want to get rid of this little Lego man, all right, you don't really want to use the healing tool for that. I mean, you can. Like if I go in here and I use my spot healing tool, it's what it's designed for, but it'll work. If I kind of zoom in, I select the carpet. All right, I've got a ding warning. I just want to make sure everything's okay on my computer. Cool, everything still seems to be working. My recording is still going ahead. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to select a bit of carpet, and then I'm going to paint over my little Lego man. And there we go. Okay, so you can use the healing tool to get rid of things, but it's not perfect. I'm going to go back. Okay, so my Lego man is gone. Okay, so you can use that. I'm going to undo and bring it back. You have another option down here, and that's our clone tool. And so what the clone tool does is it actually will copy an area of the photo and then draw it in another area. So if I zoom in, and again I press my Alt key to select an area, now what it's doing here, you can see it's kind of like painting by copying an area from somewhere else. So you'll start to see some signs. So I'm going to go back and click a little bit there. So a lot of kind of re-clicking to kind of get it how you want it. And that's another way to remove things that you don't want on a larger scale. So let's just say I wanted to get rid of, I'm going to zoom out a bit. If I wanted to get rid of this whole pole thing here, what I can do is I can use that clone tool, select an area of carpet, say here. I'll increase the size to make this quicker. I'm going to do this really quick. And then I'm just kind of like paint over that. So what I'm doing is I'm just kind of painting over that image using more of my image, okay? People do this a lot, and you can kind of tell when people do it. You'll see some really bad Photoshops, like this is a bad one. So you can kind of tell I've done it because you can see here we've got these three, you've got these three spots there, there, and there, which are exact copies because that's the reference point that it used. So you can really tell when you have like a quick dodgy Photoshop job, that would be called a quick dodgy Photoshop job because you start to see those images that are kind of like repeated. So the best way to fix that is to kind of go back into your clone tool and kind of go over, select. So I'm constantly selecting different parts of this as I go. Now this is where knowing your shortcut keys is going to save you a ton of time because I'm not moving back and forth. I'm just staring at my image, as you can probably see from my webcam. And I'm just pressing the shortcut keys like Alt to select some carpet. So as we go through, I can start to do this. All right, so now if I move back out, that's kind of gone, right? Like, it's not bad, it's quick. You probably spend a bit more time on it. If I undo that, we can see what we've already got rid of, right? Like, that's not bad. So that's using two tools. So the healing tool for small things, and what we have is the clone stamp tool for copying things. Now, the other thing that clone stamp tool is good for is for adding stuff, right? So let's say, I'm trying to look at my bad image here. Let's say I wanted to, I don't know, Rafi, he's lost a Lego brick. Oops, I'll just bring it back up. I'm just going to put that back into my screen, sorry. There we go. So let's say Rafi's lost this Lego brick here, and he wants to have it over here. So that's where the clone tool will work for you as well. So by pressing the Alt key, I can select that, and then over here, we can kind of just paint that in. There we go. So now that Lego piece has appeared over there. But you'll notice that you can kind of see that was a darker area of carpet. So you can kind of see that darker area around there. Okay, so that's kind of like a dead giveaway, we've done that. So if we want to, we can then go in here and we can select the clone tool, and I can bring that down a little bit, and I can start to kind of clean that up. All right? So what I'm trying to do is get rid of that dark carpet area. I'm kind of cheating a little bit, right? There we go. So again, you can see where Photoshop is powerful by using bits of the image that are already there. All right, I'll zoom back up. So now we have a bit of Lego piece there. So wonderful. Now he's gained a Lego piece. He's going to be happy by that. So let's keep going. Let's keep going through here. So some other things that we can do in terms of obviously editing a photo is if we wanted to say to paint or to draw. If I go into the eyedropper tool here. So before I told you how this kind of picks your color. So you can see we've got a whole bunch of colors here. By clicking on that eyedropper tool, it's getting me that exact color. So if you needed an exact color from an image, that's what that eyedropper tool is for. I'm kind of going through and selecting that exact color, and it will give it to you. If I double click here, it'll give you the RGB and the CMYK values as well. So it gives you that exact color. So if you needed to get a color out of a photo, maybe you wanted to use it to create a title or something like that. No worries, Carolyn. You can do that by selecting different parts of this image here. So that's what your eyedropper tool is for. All right, so I think my son's just come home, so he's kind of barking. All right, so let's keep going through here as well. All right, I'll show you my magic wand tool. So this is what we used before, but I'll show you how it works on a photo. I'm going to try and select, let's see how it works. It's not, like I said, it's not a great photo, but I'll select that yellow block. Actually, I'll set this gray block. There we go. I'm going to zoom in. So what this is going to try and do is select everything of that same kind of color. You can see how it's kind of doing it there. Okay. Now, if I change my tolerance here, I might bring it up to 60. You can see, oops, maybe even make it higher. There we go there. So you can see the tolerance, the larger the number, okay, the more, I guess, the less precise it is. So you can see I'm almost going to select that entire white block. If I bring that tolerance up to, say, 150, I might, yeah, so that's all, it's too much. I'll bring it back down to 110. There we go, it's not bad. So now I can actually select certain elements out of an image with that magic wand tool. So it allows me, instead of having to kind of manually go and select all the areas around there, it's trying to do a good job for it. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to press Control-C, Control-V. And now we have another piece. All right, there we go. Now, while I'm on that, I'll show you what else you have here. So you have your transform tools. So what I'll do is I can scale that up and scale that down. Okay, so they're your transform tools. So you can change size of the things. Again, remember when we increase the size of something, the pixel density is already set. So if I increase it, make it larger, I'm going to make those pixels larger. So I'm going to make this Lego brick bigger. Hit enter, and you'll start to see it's starting to get a little bit blurry there. We can play around with that. We can rotate stuff around. I might just scale it back down again. We can do a whole bunch of kind of things with that. So I'll bring it up and I'll move it over there. All right. And if we want to, let's be really clever. I'm going to make it look like it actually belongs there. He actually has a giant Lego piece. In your images, okay, whenever you copy and paste, you get a new layer. Now, once that layer's there, okay, you can see I can turn it on and off. We can actually put some effects on that layer. So I'm going to right-click that layer. And I'm going to go into my blending options. Now what I'm given here is a bunch of effects that I'm going to do that works just on that layer. I'm going to give it a little bit of a drop shadow There we go. I'm just going to try and make it look like it belongs here. So and change that. So you can see here, and I'm looking at these pieces, I can see that it's a bit darker, right? I can also see where the angle of that is. So I'm going to change the angle of my shadow to try and match the shadow of where those pieces are, which is about there. I'm even going to change the color of my shadow to match those. A bit darker. I can change the distance, right? So I can kind of move that shadow away if I want to. I can change the spread of it, make it really big or really tight. So you can start to change some things here as well. That's good enough for my quick set. So now I've got a drop shadow, and I hit OK. And then if I zoom back out again, there we go. It actually looks like that piece is a little bit more, I guess, in that scene, doesn't it, by adding that little shadow. So that is right-clicking, blending options, and going through these options here as well. There's a whole bunch of other ones. You can put a stroke, so you can surround it. You've got inner shadows, glows, those kind of things as well. So they're your styles, and that affects everything that's in that layer there. All right, we'll show a couple more things. We've only got about 15 minutes left, so I just want to show you a few more editing effects in Photoshop. Again, this is just an intro, and then I want to show you how to save, and I also want to show you how to kind of export your image to use it for something else. So we'll do a couple more things as we go. All right, so as we kind of go through here, let's show, I guess, these burn and dodge tools. I might even show your blur tools as well. So your blur and your smudge tool, they're really there for, well, exactly that. You can kind of like change the focus of an image by blurring it, I suppose. So I'm going to blur my buddy Winston here. I'm going to blur his face a bit. So if I select that, it's just like a brush. If I start painting with it, you're going to start to see that kind of that blur coming through now. It might even be hard. Oh, I know you're starting to see now. So I'm starting to kind of blur him out of focus, okay? If I change the strength of that to, let's say, 100%, and I do it, you're going to see it a lot more and it happen a lot faster as well. So you can slowly kind of blur things out of the background, and you're doing that by painting. So I'm just kind of like painting the blur on the poor guy. All right, and I'm also going to keep it there. Cool. I'll do all layers. All right. So as I kind of blur him in, you're going to hear my laptop fan spinning up now. So blurring is exactly that. It's just kind of like blurring the background out. If you want to focus on something else, if you want to have, so now you can see Winston's kind of getting out of focus there, and maybe this is my focal point here. So you can kind of do that, and you can blur a whole area. You also have smudge. Not that you probably want to use it, but if I want to smudge, whoa, I can freak him out, right? So you can see my computer now is going to go into a bit of a crawl because that's taking a while to smudge. Just remember that I'm streaming and recording and doing all those things at once, so my computer is probably getting slightly hammered. But yeah, your smudge tool is for just kind of like smudging stuff in. I kind of use it if I'm like working on images and I want to blend them a little bit, or I want to like, I don't know, sometimes you can use them. Let's just say you've got a photo and there's, I don't know, someone driving past, you want to make it look like a bit of movement and speed, you can kind of smudge a bit of the layer. So that's what your smudging is for. Looks like I've just kind of warped his face. What else do we have here? So your burn and dodge tool, what they do, burn kind of like darkens an area, and dodge will lighten it. So if we go back to my little Lego brick here, right, I'm going to go onto my burn tool. I'll bring that down, and I'll increase this here. So let's just try and make this Lego piece look even more grounded in the world. So if I start to see how it's kind of like burning it, it's making like a dark edge. So I'm going to change it from that yellow, because that's using its midtones, and I'm going to change it into shadows. Let's just choose that. There we go. So now what it's doing is it's just applying, as I kind of move my mouse across, it's just trying to make that area a little bit darker as we go through. So I use this if I've like edited a photo and I've added an image, or I've added something into a photo and I want to make it look like it's sitting there and it's not like floating above it, I'll use the burn tool to kind of like darken the edges a little bit without having to paint it. And the dodge tool is the opposite of that. The dodge tool highlights, so we can put a bit of specular highlighting on things as well. So I can bring that down. I can make it look like it's kind of like shiny there. So your burn and dodge tools, I've just destroyed that probably, it looks really bad now. All right, your pen tool, this is probably into a more advanced part of Photoshop. This is combining elements of Illustrator into Photoshop. So your pen tool allows you to draw to draw vector formats in your image. So the reason you might want to do that is you might want to draw a logo or those kind of things as well. So I won't talk about those here because we're going to use that in a more advanced session of this. Your type tool is adding text to your photo or image. So if I just hit that there, I can say, there we go. And I can scale that up, scale it down. So you can start to add text. When you add text, poor dog. When you add text in, you'll have a new layer. So you can see I've got a text layer down here as well. So if I plonk that there, and this is where that eyedropper tool comes in handy. So let me show you. So I'm going to select that there. Let's just say I wanted to get a color out of this image. For that, I'm going to hit that color. I'm going to use the eyedropper tool, select that red. There we go. So now I have the exact red that is, I've been talking about that exact red which is around there. So now I've got some text on my photo. I can zoom out. I'll make it a bit bigger. Let's put it there. I might show you a couple of effects before we go. All right, I've got my photo. I'm going to right click on my text, go to those blending options like we had before, and they'll work on text as well. So I can add a stroke if I wanted to. So if I go into stroke here, I'll change the size of that, so I can add a little bit more into that. I can do, if I do a drop shadow on this, it'll kind of look a bit cool. So here's my drop shadow. You're not going to see much here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to move it away. I'm going to move it all the way down here. I'm going to make it a bit more blurred. Change the spread of it. Alright, so what I'm doing, I'll stop it there. That was pretty too far. So yeah, I'm going to just change that. I might make it 500 pixels away. Actually, let's make it 1200. There we go. I'm trying to make it look like it's almost floating above the sky there. So there we go. I've got a bit of a shadow happening there. I might bring the opacity of that down just a touch. There we go. And then I'm going to put a bevel and emboss. This kind of embosses that text there. I've added a bit of depth to it. I can increase that depth as well. There we go. Okay, so now I have my amazing Arafity. There's my font there as well. So you can kind of edit your photos. I might just move that a little bit. So you can see as I move that, there's the shadow that it's casting there, which is kind of cool. We'll move that down there. All right, so there is my amazing image. So yeah, so that's kind of a bit of a quick run through of some basic photo editing techniques and text. Now I'm going to show you one last thing before we go, in terms of saving this. Now, when you save an image, okay, you have a few options. So if I go File, Save, all right, the easiest one. By default, you can get a Photoshop file. So what that is going to save is it's not just going to save your photo, okay, which we still, if we go all the way back down here, I still have it under there before I destroyed everything, right? I'll turn that off. So there's my original photo. And there's Word. If I save this as a Photoshop file, it's going to save every single one of these layers. So it's going to save the original photo. It's going to save any other copies I made of the photo. It's going to save any other elements I dropped in here, which we still haven't talked about. I'll show you that on another lesson where we can actually, add elements from other photos in. It'll save all of that as in one file. And so that file will be quite large because if you've got, say, 10 layers with 10 different photos in there, it's taking all that information in. But the handy thing about that is that you don't need to have those original files floating around anymore. So it kind of compacts everything together in one file called a Photoshop file, and everything is still accessible. You can go through and change every layer. So I would always save a Photoshop file as your working file. But if you wanted to print this, you wanted to email it, you wanted to give it to somebody else, and they don't have Photoshop, and there's a good chance that they probably don't, then you don't want to give them the Photoshop file because they won't be able to do anything with it. All right, so that's where you have a couple of options. So I'm going to go File, Save. I'm going to keep my Photoshop file. I'll just save it on the desktop. Okay, and okay. So now if I close that down and I go File, Open, and I go to Desktop, and there it is there. There is my photo with all the layers intact. I can go in, I can turn them on, I can turn them off again. Okay, so everything's still there. If I wanted to save this as an image that someone else can use, that's when you need to do your File, Save As, or File, Export. So if I do File, Save As, I can just go down here and I can choose a JPEG, which is probably the most used. A JPEG is still a pretty good format. And if I go Save, right, it already exists here. There we go. What this is going to do is give you a couple of options on the quality of the image. So if I go to maximum here, it's going to say it's 2.6 meg. You probably won't notice a difference. And if I go to medium, it's half that size, and I doubt you saw a difference there. So that's telling you how you're going to save it, and I'm going to save that. You can see my Photoshop file is still there because I've saved as a JPEG, and what that's done is that's made think of it like it's flattened all those layers out, and it's made one JPEG file. So you can't go back in and edit it. You can't change any of these layers. They've all been mushed together basically as one layer. But that JPEG is what you will use to print or to email. All right, so they're your two saving options. Save as a PSD to save the Photoshop file and all your workings and all your layers, so always do that. But if you want to share the image, save it as something else or a JPEG. The other option you can do is if we go into File, Export, there's Save for Web, and this is pretty cool actually. So what this does is to be saved, what kind of quality? Now the reason you'd use this is if you were doing it for, say, the web. So let's say you're saving something for your school webpage, and you're working to certain resolutions, which your web developer will give you. He'll say, I want an image of this many pixels. Okay, you can change it here. So I can say I want this to be, I don't know, 1920 by 1440, right? So that's kind of like a standard, I guess, high definition resolution. So you can see it's half the size. So it's scaled it down by 50%. All right. It also told me that this file size is now 272 kilobytes, right? As opposed to it being double that. So you can start to change your image size and also your quality. So if I go down here, as I scroll up, I'll go all the way down to kind of a low quality. You can see it's only going to be 115 kilobytes. What this is down here, this is telling you how long it will take to download on a 56K modem, which I haven't seen anymore. So that's just saying that, like, let's just say a normal internet speed. I don't know what a normal internet speed is. Let's say 1 meg. Let's just say that. Right, so it's going to say at that speed it's going to take 2 seconds to download that image, right? If we bring the quality up to 100%, there we go. It's going to take 20 seconds to download that image, right? So again, that's also a very slow sign. These are really slow internet speeds, actually. That's a lot faster than this now. But anyway, so this allows you to adjust the quality of your photo and actually see that change happen in real time. Like again, I can't see the difference there, but the file size is definitely changing, right? So File Save for Web allows you to adjust your resolution, your output, and see how big that file is going to be. Okay, so that is your saving. Now, if I hit save, and then we'll kind of go through here, and then we'll save this. Done. I'll save it to the desktop. Yep, I'll just replace it. Cool. So now I've saved a JPEG version of that again, but I had a lot more control over it. So that is it, really. So we might wrap it up there. Hopefully that was helpful as a bit of a crash course into Photoshop. Again, it's a lot easier to use Photoshop than I guess it is to hear someone yapping on about it. So jump into Photoshop and have a play and see how you go. I'm sure you're all very busy right now, but have a play and see how those tools work. Once this stream finishes in a minute or two, this video will be automatically uploaded to YouTube, so you can go back and watch the live stream. That resolution will be quite low because it will be at the resolution it's streamed at, but I will also be uploading the high resolution version, which I'm recording as well, so you can go back and watch that a little bit later. Slow down the talking speed by all means, but give me a little bit of time to upload that because I am on Macedon internet, which is it's not the fastest, but still pretty good. So there you go. So thank you very much for having a look at that. Now, what do we have coming up? Let's have a look. What I might do is I might just go back here just to, I guess, plug what else we're doing. So that is our masterclass for Photoshop for today. I believe our full schedule, let me just jump in here. I should know what it is because I put it up. Let's see what we've got for the rest of if you've used AI before, to create augmented creations. So let me give you an example really quickly. You could make, students could make a poster. I don't know, they're doing a poster on the First Fleet. I'm just thinking back to my teaching days. And what they might do is they might draw a picture of one of the boats, and then they could make that an augmented experience. So if you put your phone over that boat, they actually see a 3D model coming to life and spinning around and all those kind of fun things. So that's augmented reality. We're doing that on the 20th. Then we have design thinking, which I'm guessing some of you may have done before. So design thinking is how we work at the tech school. 3D printing coming up after that, and how to create 3D objects using Tinkercad. All the software that we have here you'll be able to access. We're doing laser cutting and how to use laser cutting software and equipment. More design thinking. Lightburn, which is a laser cutting software which you use in most schools, Illustrator, and InDesign. So that's kind of our week there. But anyway, I'll stop plugging that. Thank you for watching, and I will catch you maybe in the next stream. So I'll see you later. Bye.